Hello, and welcome to our second Authors and ARCs webinar, where we'll be pairing author presentations and a panel with free ARCs of the books discussed today. I'm Maggie Reagan, Senior Editor, Books for Youth at Booklist. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few technical details. The audience is in listen-only mode, but we welcome any questions you may have. On the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. If you have a question or need technical assistance, simply click Q&A and type your message into the box that appears. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions, and we'll pass along any other questions to today's panelists so that they can follow up with you after the webinar. Links to today's title list, which includes links to the e-ARCs of all the amazing titles discussed today, were included in the reminder email you received from Zoom 1 hour ago. To download them, please open that email, scroll to the bottom, and click on the link located there. You can also download the slides at any time by copying the URL on this screen into your web browser. Today, we'll have the pleasure of hearing from Les Stroud, author of Wild Outside, Christian Allaire, author of The Power of Style, Jenny Elder Moke, author of The Curse of the Spectre Queen, Graci Kim, author of The Last Fallen Star, and Luke Cunningham, author of Leo, Inventor Extraordinaire. First up, we'll hear from Les Stroud. Les's work as a filmmaker, author, and musician has been celebrated around the globe. Credited with creating the survival TV genre, Les remains a prolific artist focused on celebrating nature. Thanks so much for being here today, Les.
Thank you very much. I'm free to go.
Yes, hit it.
All right. Let me just. Okay. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for being here and for giving me this opportunity to talk about my new book, which is, as you can see from the cover there, Wild Outside: Around the World with Survivor Man. If we can switch the slide back to me now, and I'll just go personal for a little bit. And here I am. The reality of, all right. This is my fourth book in nonfiction. It's my first children's book. And it's not a stretch at all for me to go in this direction. Now, if some of you, if anybody is actually familiar with some of the work I've done as a television producer, as a film producer, it may seem like an obvious sort of thing. Oh, he's just going to write a book because he's been on TV, but that's not the case at all. For many, many years before ever producing film, at least in the course of doing Survivor Man and many other series, I was an outdoor guide guiding hundreds of canoe trips, camping trips, hiking trips with thousands of children. So it was never ironic to me that when I endeavored to produce a television series, that so many kids took to it. And my wonderful braggadocio point is simply that once you get these photographs of kids that were dressing up as Survivor Man for Halloween, that's the best endorsement ever. So, but again, for me, that wasn't, it was never a surprise, even though the shows are directed in I guess, an adult world of television, if you will, Discovery Channel and so on. I knew that what I was really doing would be very exciting for kids. I'll say this now, and I'll probably say it again, the underlying agenda, if you will, mission, if you will, that I have always had in every single thing I've ever done has nothing to do with television or survival guruism or any of that stuff, or adventure guruism. It has everything to do with connecting people to nature. That's all I ever really wanted to do. I just want to, in fact, I like to say it, I like to reconnect people to nature, reconnect kids to nature. And so definitely not a stretch. We can go to the slides now to go to my book. We'll go to the cover slide here for Wild Outside. So I was so honored that Anik Press, they got it right away. They knew that my work was focused on the passion of connecting kids to nature, and that's where we started from. And the book itself is a bit of an adventure. It's got a kind of a trifecta adventure approach. Next slide, please, Grace, sorry. And the next slide. One more. There we go. So if you look here, for example, there's so much to draw upon in a multimedia kind of sense in that I have, of course, photographs from all of my work in the outdoors, but also we had Andrew Barr, the wonderful illustrator. So this particular spread illustrates this, pardon the pun, beautifully for me. And then on the left side, you see these wonderful illustrations of the story as it unfolds. And on the right side, that's an actual photograph from that actual story. The only difference is my coat's in the pack, but otherwise that's the moment in Norway when that story came to be. So I endeavored to so the first part of the trifecta is that I endeavored to tell my stories of adventure in a nice dramatic way and in a way directed directly at kids. By the way, that was the beauty of getting together with Attic Press and doing this book, is this was my opportunity to speak directly to kids, as opposed to them getting it vicariously from enjoying my film work. This is all for them. There are some wonderful outdoor adventure, outdoor education books out there, but this one is directed not at the parents, although the parents are using it. This is directed right to the kids. If we could go to the next slide, I'd like to bring along the point here. So the second part of the trifecta, as far as how we structure the book, we have the stories that I tell, first person, my voice, and then connected to those stories, we have all the lessons that you can learn based on that story. There are 4 sections to the book with prepare, observe, react, and adapt. That gave us a way to kind of compartmentalize the stories. And we chose stories that I had that fit those subject headings. So what kind of story really taught a lesson about preparing for outdoor adventure? Which one teaches a great story about reacting to a difficult situation? So that's how we structured it. And as you can see, we put in stuff that the kids can do at home. Some of these things may require a little bit of assistance from an adult, but most of them the kids can do on their own. So the book is full of the stories. Then it's full of all of the how-tos on different things they can do which relate to the stories. And next screen, please. And we thought this was sort of for fun. And you know what, I'll give this one up to Annick. It was their idea. We thought, why don't we create it a little bit like it's actually an adventure journal? So you remember, this book's not about survival. It's about outdoor adventure, natural history, nature, connecting to nature, connecting with wildlife, connecting with insects. And yes, there are stories of survival in there, and we play off that, but it's a much broader scope of just nature itself. So we created the book to look like a bit of an adventure log. And so each story starts off with a bit of a baseline of, well, what's going on? Here's the location. Here's the conditions that I had to deal with. Here's the gear that I had. And here's my mission. And then we follow it through with the next slide, please, Grace. Mission accomplished. So at the end of the story, I do a bit of a wrap up on whether or not did I actually accomplish my mission. In some cases, it was kind of like, kind of, sort of, but not really. I just got by, and this is why I should have done this instead, sort of thing. So there's a lot of really, I think, wonderful lessons that also lend themselves really well just to life. Because in the end, a lot of the stuff to do with nature and kids in nature and outdoor adventure is about solving problems or reacting to problems, adapting to your situation. And we're not so much using nature to go down that road, it just naturally does. So while I might be talking about how to signal if you're in the thick woods, or how to put mud on your face if there's too many mosquitoes around, by the same token, there are larger picture questions that are being answered and riddles that are being solved, but we're basing it all on nature. Again, I want to come back to this fact that this book it's been a joy of my life to be able to write this book with Attic Press, but there's no ghostwriter. It's directly from me, because everything, as I said, I've ever done has the baseline of connecting to nature and people to nature, and especially connecting kids to nature. Right now, more than ever, obviously, we have very interesting, shall we say, situations upon us. And I did a talk yesterday for 45 scouts, and then random question, could you do it? I said, yeah, let's put up the Zoom, let's do it. Had 2 scout groups in front of me and did a talk there, because they're dealing with COVID and how to get outside. And one of the things I said to them was, you know what, you guys are perfectly placed to be ambassadors for nature, to show people how to be out in nature safely, securely, how to respect it, and not be afraid of it. Because right now there is a big onslaught of people going out into North American wilderness because they can't go cycling in Italy anymore, or what have you. So it's kind of very interesting timing for me to be able to expand upon something that I've been doing all my life anyway, and yet see that North America, at least in my situation here, certainly the world at large. I know we have an author from Australia. I'm sure it's the same thing there. People are taking to their own nature now. And so this book is really timely, I think, to be able to kind of answer that call. So what else do I have to say? Let's go to the last slide. Oh, the last slide is just a conclusion, which I just gave you. I would just repeat that, let's say in spite of whatever you might know of me as a film producer, in spite of that, this book has nothing to do with the hyperbole and the sensationalism that gets laid upon film production, television production, and everything to do with just saying, let's get the kids back out there. Let's get them out in nature. And here's a nice last concluding point. The big thing about this that I teach in this and show in this and share, you don't have to go to Peru. You don't have to go to Chile. You don't have to go to South Africa. You don't have to go anywhere but your own backyard. And that's a key point and a key message in this book, is that we'll just go to the park down the end of the street here, and there's adventure there. Just go in your backyard, your friend's backyard. And I realize too that I'm writing to kids who may live in apartment buildings and in the depths of the city, but they're still, as I say to people now, even if you live in Manhattan, you can still go to Central Park. So there is nature everywhere, and that's what this book is about. It's about finding the adventure in the nature everywhere that they are. I don't have a timer in front of me, unfortunately, so I don't know how much time I have left, but I could probably leave it right there and go to Q&A if that's all right.
Les, thank you so much. We're going to move on to Christian, and we'll do a Q&A with the group at the end. So we will hear back from you in a few minutes.
Hopefully I didn't go long. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Christian Allaire. Christian is the fashion and style writer at Vogue. He is based in New York City. Allaire is First Nations Ojibwe and grew up on the Nipissing First Nation Reserve in Ontario, Canada. Allaire always had an interest in fashion from a young age, something he believes stems from his First Nations community and its beautiful regalia. When he was young, he would often put on fashion shows for whoever would watch. Sometimes he competed against his sister. He grew up reading Vogue and still cannot believe he now works there. Outside of writing and fashion, Allaire is very interested in the arts and theater. He regularly attends openings in New York City. Thank you so much for being here, Christian.
Thank you for having me. I'm going to share my screen, have a little slideshow for everyone. So this is my book. It's called The Power of Style. And basically, as the title suggests, it's exploring how fashion can be used for more than just aesthetics. I worked with Anik Press to target it to sort of a younger audience, to be able to introduce the idea of fashion being a vessel for, expressing who we are, being proud of our culture, to break stereotypes. What we wear on our back can be used for so much more. So this is what the book is really about. I'll go to my next slide here. I guess I should make this full screen, sorry. So who am I? My name is Christian, as my lovely intro suggested. I am Indigenous. Oh, I don't know why that's doing that. I am Indigenous from Nipissing First Nation, which is in Canada. And I really wrote this book because growing up, I felt like I didn't really see my culture represented in the fashion industry. I was in love with fashion from a young age, but I found it to be very white-centric, to be honest. And I think, I really got into writing to be able to write about fashion from a more diverse lens and to explore all sorts of communities, which luckily I get to do at Vogue as my full-time job, which I'm so grateful for. So a little bit about the book. As I said, each chapter explores a different aspect of fashion or beauty even, and how it can be used to really, tell our stories, or a lot of different themes in this book, which I'm going to give you a little sneak peek here for a few chapters. This chapter, for instance, is about Indigenous ribbon work. It's a technique used by certain tribes that is really beautiful. And the ribbons in garments have so much meaning. You know, the colors represent certain things. And I wanted to show how cultural fashion can have such purpose and meaning. So on the left, I wrote a personal essay about my family, making my ribbon shirt. On the right, we have this amazing author, Jamie Okuma, designer Jamie Okuma, who specializes in ribbon work. Her stuff's amazing. This chapter here explored hair and how we wear our hair can mean so much. On the left, you know, my coworker actually, Durant Santag, wrote about collaborating with his barber on braids and how, you know, he wearing his hair natural is so important to him and how he can have so much fun with that. This hairstyle on the left here is inspired by the Windows XP logo. I don't know if you can see the reference, but I thought that was really cool. And on the right, we have a model, Indigenous model, Hatepa Clearbear, who in the chapter writes about the importance of wearing his hair long. You know, his ancestors at one point were forced to cut their hair. And so he talks about wearing it long as an homage to them and why it's important to him, which I thought was very powerful. This chapter here is on cosplayers. Cosplaying is so fascinating to me because it's obviously about dressing up as another character and sort of stepping out of yourself for a moment. But with it comes a lot of really strict rules that I didn't know about. You know, you have to be the same gender of the character you're portraying. You have to be the same size. There's a lot of these really binding rules. And I was really inspired by cosplayers who are sort of throwing the rules out the window and sort of embracing body positivity and being like, this is who I am. I can be this character even if I'm a woman, if I'm a man, if I'm small, if I'm large. I'm really sort of making their own rules in the space, which I thought was inspiring. On the left here, we have from my chapter on hijabs and modest fashion. We're seeing a big change there. And on the left is Melanie Elturk. She's a hijab designer who talked about, you know, why she wears the hijab, how it makes her feel very protected and proud of her faith, but also how it can be sort of an accessory. And she really does them in really luxe, you know, fabrics and really changing what you think modest fashion is. And on the right is my chapter on men's heels. A lot of great stories about queer youth growing up and sneaking into, you know, their mom's closet and wearing her heels. So we really showed how heels actually were worn by men first, and how people are now reclaiming that. Here we have Billy Porter, who's a Broadway star, an actor, and he wears heels almost every time he hits the red carpet, which I think is really inspiring for youth to see, you know, in mainstream media. Lastly, we have a little chapter on beauty and how even makeup can express who we are. This is an Indigenous makeup artist who takes cues from traditional paintings and, as you see, applies them on her forehead. So really, all in all, the book, I think, is just a really fun visual exploration of how style can really express who we are, like I said, and be something smarter and more meatier than you might think. So yeah, that's my book. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christian. Next up, we'll hear from Jenny Elder Moke. Jenny writes young adult fiction in an attempt to recapture the shining infinity of youth. She worked for several years at an independent publisher in Austin, Texas, before realizing she would rather write the manuscripts than read them. She is a member of the Texas Writers League and has studied children's writing with Liz Garton Scanlon. She was a finalist in the Austin Film Festival Fiction Podcast Competition in 2017 for her podcast script, Target. When she's not writing, she's gathering story ideas from her daily adventures with her 2 irredeemable rapscallions and honing her ninja skills as a black belt in Taekwondo. Jenny lives in Denver, Colorado with her husband and 2 children. Take it away, Jenny.
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to start my video. And hello, I do not have slides because my book is just words. It's not beautiful like Christian's book. So you'll have to deal with my face instead. So I'm Jenny Elder Moke, and my book is Curse of the Spectre Queen. And this is actually the printed ARC cover. And what you're seeing there on the screen is the final cover, which is beautiful, and I stare at it multiple times a day. And it's the first in a series. And so this book in particular, I like to describe it as if Indiana Jones and the Mummy and National Treasure all got together and made a baby, and that baby came out as a book. It would be this book. It's got Celtic curses, obviously, otherwise the title would be very misleading. It's got puzzles to decode, ancient relics to discover, a secret cult to stop from ending the world, childhood crushes, woody best friends, the whole nine. If you can think of a trope from those movies, I have somehow managed to work it into all of these books. So obviously there's a fantastical element to it because there's a curse, but it's also a historical novel. It's set in 1925. And it's about a girl who works in an antique bookshop, but who longs for the adventure of discovery in the field of archaeology. So archaeology at that time was really in a boom, thanks to Howard Carter's discovery of the tomb of Tutankhamun in 1923. So it was really kind of a turning point for archaeology. So for our reluctant hero, Samantha Knox, who would be thrilled, by the way, to have her name on the cover of a book, she gets a book at the shop where she works that is unlike any other book she has ever seen. And it ends up sending her on a journey across the world, all the way to Dublin, Ireland, where she will encounter the Hellfire Club. So my book is fake, but the Hellfire Club is a real place in the mountains outside of Dublin. It was actually a hunting lodge that was built in the late 1700s. And the stories of it being cursed by the devil go all the way back to its original construction. So when I learned about the Hellfire Club in the course of researching for this book, I learned all about its really fascinating, super weird and spooky history that I got to explore a lot more in my book. So hopefully if you read it, you can learn more about the Hellfire Club too. So today, I just wanted to read a little snippet from the opening chapter, which describes when Sam first receives this mysterious book in her shop. And this is our first introduction as a reader to the lore of the Hellfire Club and the surrounding tales that grew up about its wickedness, in this case, particularly the Hellfire Club cat. So I will read just a little short bit. The writing was, as she suspected, faded and illegible in many places, but that wasn't what drew her attention to the book. It was the hasty sketch of a cat on the open page, the graphite strokes thick and dark and tearing through the paper in some places. She could even see smudges where the lead must have broken. Whoever drew this cat must have had very strong feelings about it. Except that the longer she stared at the image, the less it actually looked like a cat, at least not like any ordinary house cat. The proportions were all wrong. The ears too sharp and pointed, almost like horns. The jaw too long and narrow, more fitted to a dog. And then there were the eyes. They were nothing more than blank page, but the longer she stared, the more they seemed to burn, two desolate holes radiating a promise of danger. Awareness prickled down her legs and across her arms as if a wayward slip of icy January wind had found its way into the shop. But it wasn't the wind. It was the way the cat kept staring, even when she slid the book aside. Those sightless eyes were on her, always on her, and in a fit of fear, she slammed the cover shut. "Don't be such a fool," Sam muttered, though she made no attempt to open it again. "It's only an old book. What's the harm?" I don't want to ruin Sam's day, but the answer is it's a lot of harm. So thank you for your time, and I'm looking forward to answering more questions in the Q&A. And I hope you all get a chance to read and enjoy Curse of the Spectre Queen.
Thank you so much, Jenny. We'll now hear from Graci Kim. Graci is a Korean Kiwi diplomat turned author who writes about the magic she wants to see in the world. The Last Fallen Star is her middle grade debut. In a previous life, she used to be a cooking show host, and she once ran a business that turned children's drawings into plushies. When she's not lost in her imagination, you'll find Graci drinking flat whites, eating ramen, and most likely hugging a dog, or ideally, many. She lives in New Zealand with her husband and daughter. Thank you so much for joining us today, Graci.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for that lovely welcome. I'm going to share my screen. There we go. Wonderful. So I am the author of The Last Fallen Star. It is a story about Korean American witches in Los Angeles. It's inspired by Korean mythology, and it's all about families, in particular sisters. It's about forbidden magic, and it's about one particular girl who is desperate to fit in. Now, her name is Riley O. She's 12 years old, and all she's ever wanted is to fit in. All she's ever really wanted is to become a healing witch because her parents and her sister are healing witches too. The problem is that she was adopted and her biological parents weren't witches, which means despite knowing the words to every healing spell she's ever heard, she will never have magic. And then one day, her sister Hattie has this brilliant idea. She finds out about a spell in which she can share half of her magic with Riley. It's the perfect plan, except that it's forbidden and extremely dangerous. So do they do it anyway? Yes, they do. And as you can imagine, things go terribly wrong. And when Hattie's life ends up hanging in the balance, Riley has to go on the search for the God Realm's last fallen star, whatever and wherever it may be, or risk losing her sister forever. That's the pitch for the book. And I thought instead of talking more about the book itself, we could do something a little fun. I thought we could, I guess, get lost a little bit in the world of the book. So as you can see on my screen, there are 6 patron goddesses in this world, in the world of gifted witch clans. There's the cave bear goddess, the 3-legged crow, the water dragon, the moon rabbit, the 9-tailed fox, and the mountain tiger goddess, all personalities from Korean mythology. And each of them have a gifted witch clan that go under them. So I thought if we transport ourselves back to middle school and you answer a few of my questions, like a little personality quiz, you may find you fall into one of these 6 gifted witch clans. All right, oh, how do I go next? Oh, there we go. Oh. If you were the kid in middle school who was super sporty, loved kicking a ball around, often protected the little guy against the bullies, you're big, tough and strong, but almost always a softie at heart, you are probably a protector witch from the Middle clan, descended from the water dragon goddess. Provide and protect is your clan motto, and you are blessed with super speed and super strength. And you may not know, but Graci Kim, the Olympic gold medalist snowboarder, is in fact a Miru witch. You heard it here first. If you were in middle school, the kid who was often quite shy, quiet, the one that bought 2 lunches and extra snacks just in case others are hungry because you love sharing, you're a great listener. And even though you're not in the popular crowd per se, you are friends with everyone. You're probably an infuser witch from the Toki clan. Kindness and heart is your thing, and you can make potions and you can enchant substances with magic, which is why a lot of the top restaurants in LA, especially in Koreatown, are run by Toki witches. Now, if you're the kid who's like super confident, likes to speak your mind, likes to boss people around a bit, quite often the student leader type who will show the new kid around school who's transferred halfway through the year, sometimes a bully, but often misunderstood, you are probably a seeing witch from the Samjogo clan, descended from the 3-legged crow goddess, and you have the power to have premonitions in your dreams, and you can just touch items or people and see visions of truth, which is why Samsung, LG, Hyundai, Kia, these big Korean conglomerates are often run by Samjogos because they can touch business partners with consent or business contracts and divine their success. All right, almost there. If you're the cool kid, often quite good looking, sometimes possibly misjudged for being shallow, but you have so much more to offer. And if you were one of those performer types, singers, dancers, that type of thing, you are probably an illusionist from the Kumiho clan. Beauty and influence is your thing, and you can do glamour magic on people and things and places for people to see what you want them to see. And all but one of the BTS members are Kumiho. True story. Second to last, if you are the quiet old soul that gave off that air of respect, you're like super proud, but also very selfless, and one that will step up to take the blame so your friends don't get in trouble, even though you probably weren't the one to commit the act in the first place, you are probably a healer witch from the Kom clan. Service and sacrifice is your thing, and Riley O, our main character, and her family are from this clan. Now, Last but not least, if you were the bookworm, you were quite often good at school. You were hungry for knowledge, very curious, maybe teased and left out in social circles, and perhaps even expelled for alleged violent behavior. You are probably a scholar witch from the Horangi clan, descended from the mountain tiger goddess. But how much do we really know about this clan? Well, you may have to read the book to find out. Anyway, that's a little introduction to the world of the gifted witch clans. So yeah, I mean, I know that e-arcs are going to be available for you guys. So if you would love to read it, I would love for you to join the world.
Thank you so much, Gracie. That was so fun. Our final presenter will be Luke Cunningham. Luke is an Emmy-nominated writer from Philadelphia. Previously, he spent 3 years as a writer for The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon. He developed a passion for the Renaissance while earning a history degree from Brown University. And he currently lives in Los Angeles, California, with his wife and their son, Finn. Leo, Inventor Extraordinaire is his first novel. Take it away, Luke.
Hi. Nice to meet you. I feel like I am batting fifth on the 1927 Yankees. Every other book sounds incredible. I can't believe I just learned which clan the members of BTS were mostly members of. That's incredible. So my book is Leo, Inventor Extraordinaire. Next slide, please. That's the cover. So our hero is Leo, a 13-year-old boy genius who finds out he is heir to the world's coolest toy company, Win Toys. Leo is a polymath and a student at the Academy of Florence. He is a genius-level artist, architect, engineer, and scientist, but his inventions go haywire because he always overlooks some minor detail. Leo has to use his considerable talent to help rebuild Win Toys and to discover the one thing he's always wanted to know: why his parents left him alone as a lifer at the Academy of Florence. The hook is that our story is an allegory to Leonardo da Vinci's life and Renaissance history. Every illustration in the book is done in a Renaissance style. For instance, those two drawings, the one on top is Win Tower, which is the headquarters of the company that is based on the Palazzo Vecchio in Florence. And then you can see on the left, that is the mech suit that Leo will ultimately build. And you can see that it is based on Da Vinci's famous Vitruvian Man. Next slide, please. So the book is filled with these little Easter eggs which allude to Renaissance art and history. Again, this drawing on the right, you saw the logo, which is, of course, Leo in the mech suit. That's on the cover. And then this is the pet lion that our hero Leo is going to build, named Gemini. It's a 500-pound robot lion. Again, Da Vinci really did make a working robot lion 500 years ago for the King of France. It would take 3 steps forward and display a bouquet of lilies when it roared. So everything in the book has a connection back to Renaissance history. And we can talk more about the piano in Leo's room eventually. Next slide, please. So I envision 3 main reader profiles for Leo. The first one is the action adventure reader. They enjoy the book. They recommend it to friends as a fun read. Maybe they enjoy the action scenes and jokes. The second reader is a little bit more of a history buff. They want to know more about the connections and how these devices came to be and how they kind of fit in the story and possibilities of future technology. And the reading ignites the curiosity in the Renaissance, and they want to investigate those historical references. I've set up a whole Instagram page where I have the illustrations and kind of explain how they work in the story, and then also their historical connection and what's coming in from the Renaissance. And then the third one is where I'm really asking librarians for a favor. That is potentially the Leos, like those kids who have a brain that's like a winning lottery ticket. And they relate to the main character on an emotional level, and they understand that librarians are curators of information, that they're essentially people like the coolest guy at the record store is the librarian in the library. They can direct you on how to exercise your brain more. They're problem solvers, and I'm hoping that like you can find those Leos and direct them towards this book and then further reading. I actually worked on the book and the research with my uncle Ned, who is one of the librarians at the Fisher Fine Arts Library at the University of Pennsylvania. Next slide, please. These are some discussion sections or discussion questions for teachers, like why is this period in history called the Renaissance? What did people take a renewed interest in? What was reborn? And a lot of that is the ideas of antiquity and the Greeks, and to a certain extent the Romans, and they went back and revisited those ideas and brought them forward and updated them. What did Leonardo da Vinci invent that we still use today? This is one of my favorite subjects. So many things. The design for a canal lock is the exact same today as it was when Da Vinci reinvented it 500 years ago. I'm sorry, reinvigorated the design. They had canals, but the locks were wonky, and he came up with a design that we still use today. And there's a number of things that we still use today that he came up with, swinging bridges. What is the legacy of the Renaissance? We can probably get into that with some of the Q&A questions, but really it's Western democracy and the pursuit of science and empirical truth as a collective decision that we made that all was fostered during the Renaissance. And final slide. About me, it's my first novel. I am a former late night writer. Fun fact, I got dunked on by Kobe Bryant in high school, and I live in Los Angeles with my wife and our son, Finn. Thanks very much. Leo, inventor extraordinaire.
Thank you so much, Luke. And thank you everybody else for these wonderful presentations. These are so great. And I'm sure everyone here is so excited to take a look at all of these books. So now that you've all had a chance to tell us a little bit more about yourselves and your stories, we're going to transition into panel mode. We have some individual questions for each of you so we can get a little bit more into all of your books. And then we've got some general questions for you too, just kind of about what it's like to be creating in this current environment, especially since I know we're all a little bummed not to be all together in person right now. So go ahead if you haven't, it looks like you kind of all are on your way, but if you haven't, go ahead and unmute yourselves and start your videos and we can get started. So if I have an individual question for you, I will lob it to you direct. I can start my own video. Whoops. So taking my own advice here. We'll lob it to you directly. And then if I've got a general question for you, we can figure that out as we go. But so Luke, since you're currently on everybody's mind, why don't we start with you and some of those discussion questions that you just brought up. But what inspired you to write about Da Vinci and the Renaissance? And what are some of those inventions that you find particularly interesting?
Well, it's always been my favorite period of history because we owe so much to this time period when we kind of collectively decided that the best way forward was to follow science and empirical truth. And Da Vinci pursued science and empirical truth, but he also knew that the best way to get people to accept science and empirical truth was to provide them with genuinely beautiful things. Like he was trying to really merge form and function and give them beautiful things. I think it's something that, Christian is exploring in his book as well. And for the inventions that he designed, one of the things that's, kind of everything in the book, everything that you see a sketch of that Leo was working on, there's some type of connection back to the Renaissance. It's something that Da Vinci really made. Our book is set in the near future, so it's kind of like Da Vinci style drawings of speculative technology. But one of the things in Leo's room is this dusty old piano that he's never really used before. And that is based on this instrument called a viola organista. That is, Da Vinci designed this like crazy piano 500 years ago that nobody could really figure out how to make. And then they made one 7 years ago, and a concert pianist in Poland like worked on it forever to figure out how to play it. It was functional, it was beautiful, and he gave this like concert on this piano that took I don't know, however many years from then to design. It was in one of the codices. There was something missing, and they figured out how to correct that one design flaw. And in our book, Leo has this dusty old piano. He finally wipes off the dust and realizes that these strange characters, if he looks at them in a mirror, they're musical notes, and they're the opening notes to Here Comes the Sun. He plays the opening notes, it unlocks the gate to our first puzzle, and we are off and running.
Thanks. We're going to circle back to you in a minute, but Christian, do you have a follow-up to that, since Luke kind of punted over to you there? And also, when it comes to both style and culture, where do you see the line between appreciation and appropriation?
Oh, that's a good question. I just saw someone ask that in the Q&A. Couldn't be a better question. Yes, I think there is a line between appropriation versus appreciation. I get that question asked a lot, specifically with Indigenous fashion too. I get that a lot. I think if you're gonna, appreciate a culture's fashion or design, you would A, do your research about that culture, B, try to collaborate with someone or involve someone from that culture. I think that's where it could go into appropriation, is when you see fashion brands get obviously inspired by another culture, but don't do their research or involve anyone. And it could be very, what's the word, uninformed or offensive, because they don't really know the context of the thing they're drawing from. So I always tell even young designers who are like, I'm inspired by this, but I don't know if I'm allowed to like design it. Just do your research and just talk with people. And if you can, collaborate with someone, because then you'll get a more honest end result, I think. If that answers that question.
That's great. Thank you so much. Jenny, I want to move over to you for a second here, because you're writing historical fiction. And I want to ask, what drew you to the time periods that you chose in particular? And was there anything that you learned in researching these books that surprised you, and anything you had to think about while you were incorporating that research into your text?
Yes. So I could talk for hours. I won't. I don't want to freak anybody out. I could talk for hours about historical fiction, because I grew up reading it and sort of naturally segued into writing it. And I like to call it, oops, you learned something, which is that it's like the best of both worlds. You get the story, you get the human element of it, you get to feel like you're living at something. And for someone who didn't love history growing up, because it was just like names and dates and places and like actions, that diving into historical research with the specific intention of telling my character story just opened it up to me, where it was suddenly like I could read, like, for instance, my first book, Hood, was set in 1215, which was on the cusp of the first English Civil War, and a king who was super bad at his job. And so, like you can read, like in 1215, he signed this, he signed the Magna Carta at Runnymede, and that's like a really boring line item. But when you start exploring that through a character, it's same thing with Curse and Spectre Queen. Everybody knows about the discovery of the tomb of Tutankhamun. That doesn't sound as exciting to us now, but when you think about being a young woman interested in archaeology, when the greatest discovery of her generation happens and just opens up the field, that for me was such a natural point to place my story of where they could explore. And I think I'm probably one of the least qualified people on this panel to talk about appropriation, but that's something that I explore, particularly in the second book of the follow-up to Curse of the Spectre Queen, but even in Curse of the Spectre Queen, this question of who do these stories belong to, and who has the right to tell them, and why, and more particularly, why do I want to tell them? Why am I exploring them? Am I the best person to do it? And am I taking that story away from someone else, and that opportunity away from someone else, by by writing the story that I'm writing, because I have a great deal of privilege as a white woman that other people don't have. And so that greatly affected the places that I chose, the cultures I chose to explore, and why I chose to explore them, because I don't want to take away anybody's story that they haven't yet had a chance to tell themselves. So that's kind of where I come at it from a historical perspective. And like, history is real messy. We all know that. Like, people were real sloppy in history. People are real sloppy today. So I really try to be as sensitive as I can to Christian's point about asking the right people for the right information before I just go in and assume that I'm going to be the best at it.
Thank you. Graci, your presentation made it really clear that you are taking these ideas that have this huge history and this huge importance in a culture and applying them into kind of a modern society ideas and just modern culture. Did you find that there were a lot of challenges when you were doing this? And then did you feel any kind of burden of responsibility when you were working on this novel?
Burden of responsibility for sure. I mean, it's funny because I know culture is not a monolith. Like, I know theoretically that my lived experience and my exposure to Korean mythology and stories as a Korean diaspora is different from anybody else, right? Who falls into the Korean diaspora, or from a Korean from Korea or whatever. I know they're all different. And yet I feel this immense responsibility to not only get it done well, but to get it right, which is kind of hard, right? Because there is no right. Everybody's story is as right as it is true to them. So I know that, and yet it has been very difficult. At the same time, I feel like I mostly just feel immense joy and immense pride, because these are the stories that my 할머니, so my nana, and my parents told me when I was little, that I've kind of injected and mixed into this other story. And I just feel so excited that I can share these stories with people that may have never heard them. Because the thing about stories, right, is that if they're not told, they die. They only live on by virtue of being shared. And the fact that I can play a role in that sharing process is just, I don't know, it's just bloody awesome, really. So it has been hard, yes, but also I just feel it a privilege to share.
Thank you. And Les, I'd love to hear about how you've started making this transition into writing children's books, and what inspired you to create this book after doing your previous work. Oh, you're on mute.
Says the filmmaker techno dude who can't even put on his microphone.
Every day.
Call back into my recording studio. Sorry about that. The inspiration has always been there. It's not a new inspiration for me at all. As I said, as an outdoor guide, 15 years of guiding children in the wilderness on outdoor adventures and canoe trips and hiking and what have you. So it's not so much of a transition for me as more of a it's about time kind of situation. Because as I said too, even the work I did as a filmmaker that might have been for adult nonfiction. So my other 4 books are adult nonfiction. And the filmmaking is nonfiction, not reality TV, by the way. It's documented work. That's the only, I don't touch reality television. So anybody who doesn't know my work, don't put me in the pile with Naked and Afraid. It's a completely different beast. Everything I do is about education. It always has been. You know, if you were an executive producer, you might say that's too earnest and too boring or something. But for me, no, that's really edifying, and it's really captivating to learn from nature. So not so much a transition into something new for me, more of a fruition of what I've been doing all along. And so if you were, even as I say, in my other books or my film work, even though I might be speaking to the adult world, I was always speaking in a way that I at least hoped that the young world would understand and grasp. And indeed they did. And that part of me was easily the proudest of anything that I was involved with, or the proudest result, shall we say. So to go, in fact, I'd actually, to give a little tiny behind the drip scenes on this, is that I was actually pushing fiction writing, and I've been working on a number of fiction children books. But when I started speaking to Atlantic Press, of course, well, you're that guy. Why don't we start with nonfiction? So I was like, all right, let's do that. Let's, because it's just going to roll off of my tongue, sort of thing. And certainly it did. So the world of educating, the world of sharing nature and educating people through this sharing of nature, and the world of getting kids and people to connect to nature was just so, it's just so much a part of my DNA. It's, in the end, I guess it kind of ends up being the only thing I kind of almost sort of care about, or at least focus on, you know? So I hope that answers your question, because in the end, it's not a transition into something new. I think it's a fruition of what I've been doing all my life.
That's great. Thank you so much. And then I would just love to hear from everyone. This is a general question. But we're hearing from so many people now that we're going into kind of a year of this. Everybody's been dealing with pandemic fatigue and burnout, and we'd love to know if you're still finding ways to be creative and productive. And if your answer to this question is yes, which for a lot of people it's not, do you have any tips for anyone who's watching this webinar and struggling? You can answer in any order, but if you're, don't worry about talking over each other, we'll figure it out.
I just answered one of the questions in the Q&A, and obviously I don't mean to speak for everyone, but I know me personally, the hardest thing is to overcome the inertia of not wanting to get started on writing and just, you know, consuming all of Twitter all day. And the way I got past that and would write every day was just literally taking my phone, setting a 25-minute timer, and then throwing it across the room and just concentrating on nothing else. But the writing for 25 minutes at a time, it's called Pomodoro sessions, which it just sounds delicious. And that's how I got this done over the course of years, was just 25 minutes at a time.
I genuinely thought it was a pasta when I first heard about it.
It can be.
I will say my best advice is to be on deadline for a contract, because then you don't have a choice. But I say that facetiously because I had to write the first draft of the book 2 of the Samantha Knox novel last year, from summer to fall. And I hated it. Like, I don't hate the book, but I hated the writing process because I have 2 kids at home. They're on virtual learning. My husband had to be home from work. So we had 4 people. We had to work out schedules. It was a nightmare. And I just had to push through because I was legally obligated to. But I think for me, the energy I'm trying to bring into 2021 is to just set aside what I think I'm supposed to be doing, what I think will sell, what I think, you know, is the next great thing, and to just work on what I want to, even if it's 500 words or 1 chapter or a scene out of order, which I never write out of order. It like breaks my brain. I'm such a linear writer, but I'm just, as long as I'm getting words done, I don't care what project they're on. I don't care if they're polished or what, I just, anything that like catches my little cat's attention for, you know, 25 minutes, that's, I'm just letting myself do it, and just knowing that we won't be here forever, and that I can get back to, I mean, theoretically, a more routine, writing is never like easy, but a more routine writing schedule. So that's what I've been trying to do. I'm not saying it works, but I've been doing it.
I think for me, it's definitely been a tough year because obviously pandemic, but also I had a baby, and so our first baby. So that was kind of a whole new world. Whoa. So that was big. So I don't think I was productive or creative actually during this time. But one thing that did help was setting my day up to succeed, kind of starting the day with intention. And for me, really that was coffee. I just love coffee. I just adore coffee, but I couldn't go get my actual proper coffee. So I have an espresso machine. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but it's like little pods and you put it in and it like squeezes coffee out. Yeah. So I made it a thing to perfect my coffee. So I tried every temperature difference, every like micro foam level available. I tried like oat milk, rice milk, whatever milk. There's even this like white chocolate caramel milk, which is divine. And basically I perfected my coffee. And for that, you know, I don't know, a handful of minutes in the morning when I'm drinking that coffee, I just stop and I breathe and I tell myself my day is going to be good. Despite what happened last night, despite the lack of sleep, or despite how unproductive I've been, today will be good. And it seems so silly, but it's really been, I think, the little things, the little wins that have made the past year doable. And I hope that is something I can continue to have in the new year.
Okay, I'll jump on then. I'll speak a little more generally in terms of your question, Maggie. I think really the answer one of the possible answers in this current situation all comes down to a couple of things for me. One is something I've always been able to do, which is to pivot, to learn to pivot. I think we get so locked in, and I think the entire globe at this point, we're kind of broken from that now. But if you go back, 9 months ago, everybody's locked in. Why is this? Why me? Why this? Why no? Not now. But unfortunately, it's not a personal pandemic. You can't take it personally. You can't take what's going on personally. It's not about you. And so my answers have been to say, okay, this is not about me. I'm going to be productive. I'm going to achieve the things. To me, creation has always been, I'll go touch a little slice philosophy, is that I just believe that what all of these panelists are doing as well, but everybody's doing, including you right now, Maggie, and making this happen, we're putting balls of energy out there, balls of creative energy. And the beauty of doing that, especially as writers, is that in truth, you never really know what's going to happen to it once it's out there. You get a few Facebook posts, you get a few reviews here and there, and you get a couple of emails. And isn't that all great for our own personal, performance egos? But in reality, when you create, you just release it to the world, it does so much. Things thousands of miles away to hundreds of people you'll never meet and you'll never hear from. And all the books that are written by these panelists, I know, do that. You can't even prevent that once you put it out there. That's the wonderful thing about creating. So I think that's been my answer in the face of all of this when I speak to other people, is just learn to pivot, man, and then create. And creation doesn't mean, painting a picture or writing a book or making music. Creating is all sorts of things. It's the plumber. It's the blue collar worker. It's the office worker. You're just creative. Either way, you got to pivot. It's a problem, and it's not a personal problem. It's one sort of almost a weird, dark saving grace is, well, at least we're all in it together kind of thing. So that's my thoughts on it.
I will say, even when I was writing this book, much of it was through COVID and all these difficult times. And I also have a very demanding full-time job. So to sit down and write this book, I would often be when you sit down, you're just I can't. But I think in a way, it really forced me to find the joy in it. Everyone in my book is very inspiring and they just make me happy. And I think in a weird, twisted way, it forced me to find joy in the year. And I think now when you look at the book, you see that every page is so joyful. And it was a weird world of living in this dark world, but writing about a really amazing people who are somehow finding the light in all of this. I don't know, it was a weird experience, but I think that's what keeps me creative, is just connecting with people. As I'm sure everyone here agrees, it's we write to tell people's stories. So I don't know, it wasn't a bad year, all things considered, I guess. Trying to be positive.
Well, I think that is all we have time for in this. Thank you all so much for participating in this and for these books. No, we couldn't do Midwinter this year, but I'm so glad we were able to have you in this format. So thank you again, and thank you for your presentations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for hosting.
Thank you.
Hey, quick question. Do we have a chance to answer these chat questions once you close off, or are we lost?
Yes, no. So I had that. So if there were questions in the Q&A that we didn't have a chance to get to today, those will be distributed to you. So yes, panelists will all have a chance to take a look at the Q&A and respond to them after the webinar. And you have a few minutes now to take a look at those if you want to as well.
Okay, that's perfect.
Yeah.
My last word of the day is
answer.
Graci, as a fellow coffee lover, you made me smell it as you were speaking about it. I'm on my 7th day, no coffee.
Why would you do that to yourself?
I know. I just need to. It's been Yeah. Anyway, that's my last word. So I'm going to go out now and walk my dogs.
All right, thank you so much. Let's give it up one more time for Les, Christian, Jenny, Gracie, and Luke for taking the time to speak with us today. It's been such a pleasure. And attendees, to start downloading e-arcs of all of these fabulous titles, remember to please refer to today's title list. Hyperlinks to each books are included in the column all the way to the right of your screen. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's slide presentation, title list, a certificate of completion, and a video recording. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit www.booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones like those you see here. If you haven't already, be sure to check out Booklist Reader, where Booklist contributors post daily about all things books and library land. While you're perusing Booklist online, be sure to check out Booklinks, a quarterly supplement to Booklist, perfect for educators and school librarians. It is now freely available to all. To start reading, just click the cover image located within the left column of our homepage. And if you're not yet a subscriber, pair the page-by-page reading experience of print with the convenience of online access at booklistonline.com. And lock in print, online, digital, and archive access by taking advantage of the special webinar offer to get Booklist for only $75. Thank you so much for joining for today's webinar. And one more huge thank you to our sponsors, Annick Press, ZONDERkidz, and Disney Publishing Worldwide. This concludes today's webinar.